Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Viva Bastardo show, part of the Hagerty podcast network. Today we have Mike Spinelli, who's an automotive legend. He's sort of the Moses of car journalism. He founded Jalopnik. He's been on The Drive. He's been on a bunch of other shows. And we have this incredible, expansive chat about algorithms, the future of automotive journalism, the future of electric cars. He has a brownout. He starts sexting in the middle of the show. So let's get into it. This podcast is brought to you by Economy Signs, the specialty company. It's a father and son joint. They've been in business since 1973, and they work on everything from spec Miatas to cars formerly driven by Paul Newman. They have an incredibly deep archive of brand decals from old races like the Daytona in the 70s, and they specialize in vintage motorsport liveries. Is it liveries or livery? Anyway, they've done a ton of vintage Ferraris and priceless cars with history. If you've been to any vintage race in the USA, I'm sure you've seen their work. They do paint and vinyl, which is handy if you don't want to ruin your car. And they do any kind of thing, dragsters, motorcycles, stock cars, scooters. Well, maybe not. But anyway, check them out. They're fantastically talented. This podcast is also brought to you by Inbound Motorsports. Rami, the main geezer who runs it, says a lot of you have been reaching out. Please continue to do so. He can bring in cars from anywhere, Japan, Europe, Asia, which is also Japan. He's bringing a ton of stuff. I think there's been a strange peak of interest in Mitsubishi Pajero Evolutions. I don't know why. But anyway, give Rami a call. He's the most delightful guy, and he will be able to find you the bizarre car of your dreams. This podcast also brought to you by the audiobook Never Stop Driving, A Better Life Behind the Wheel, which is a book for enthusiasts, by enthusiasts, about the joy of driving, why we love cars, what makes us obsess over cars. Check it out. It's a fantastic listen. And it's available as an audiobook from Amazon. So you know what, man? I was researching you.
Oh, boy.
And I found, you know what, it occurred to me, this would be kind of genius. Yeah, I found a Mike Spinelli on Long Island who's a lacrosse star. And he's like 5'4",
5'4".
or something.
So I tower over.
Yeah. But what I was thinking would be amazing is if I interviewed you, convinced that you were him.
Oh, that's good.
I'm like,
that's a
so
good...
when do you get into lacrosse?
Can I stay in character? I got my first STX stick.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else with ST.
STD.
What are you implying about lacrosse players?
They're riddled with venereal diseases. I mean, what are they not?
You
Weeping
realize
lesions, open
Long Island
sores.
is not that far away.
What?
They will come hit you with those sticks.
Well, I grew up in Westchester, so lacrosse was massive. I mean, it was massive. I was not large and or athletic enough to play
massive?
it. I was massive. I was massive between the Adam's apple and the belly button. That's where I was massive.
Okay, well, let me just do a quick introduction for those of you who haven't gathered what's going on by now. I'm delighted to have Mike Spinelli here. You are like and I've been wanting to use this phrase for years in public, éminence grise, which is a French word for like old geezer or old authority. But you are like, you founded Jalopnik? You've been around for a long time. You reviewed the original Model T.
Yeah.
You invented the wheel. I mean, you've got a long...
The wheel, I think the problem with the wheel was that it understeered at the limit. And I found that out on my first drive.
But you refined, man. You stuck with it. I mean, remember all those people saying it wouldn't work?
That the wheel wouldn't work?
Yeah, it was a bullshit idea.
It started out as square. That's the crazy thing.
But the vibration was untenable.
The NVH of that was very...
I don't even know what is that?
It's automaker speak for noise, vibration, and harshness, which are things that they tune out of their vehicles.
I'm
with
going to incorporate that into my sexy language with the wife. How's my NVH today?
I don't think you want to ask that.
Yeah, she's going to go. But you've been around for a long time in automotive journalism.
It was 18 years when it was 18 years. Now it's almost 42. So 2004, I started Jalopnik.
Right.
And I started it because I had a previous career in market research.
Okay.
Internet internet market research. Was that a gunshot?
Yeah.
Where did you bring me?
It's New York themed, man. It's a New York themed podcast. People be shot.
Oh my God.
Old tenement building. It's a lot of character.
Someone's gonna come in and try and sell you some weed in a minute.
Do you know? Wait,
smoke
can I
coke.
just? I'll get back to me in a second. But do you know what's crazy about New York City now?
Yeah.
Is that everywhere you go, you smell weed.
I know.
It's like the East Village in the '90s, where I mean, okay, fine, but now you walk down like Fifth Avenue in like the 40s.
You know what I've noticed also is when you're crossing the street and you're walking past cars with the window open, it smells of weed. I'm like, holy shit! How? And I was thinking about this the other day. What's the percentage of people in New York driving stoned? I feel like it must be like 43%.
It's 40. I think that's an excellent.
I ran the numbers.
It's kind of crazy, but I would have said somewhere in the 40% range.
I mean, it's amazing. You're
Wait,
right.
but hold on. What is the crossover of people that are driving stoned that also have illegal fake paper tags on their car?
Oh.
Because that's the other thing
I think
going
that's
right
a
now.
Venn
You
diagram.
mean like those?
Like how heavy is the overlap on that Venn
You
diagram?
mean like
it's
those
tremendous.
things you see taped on the back window?
Right. It's always like temporary tag from Pennsylvania. I'm like, motherfucker, I know there's no temporary tags like that in Pennsylvania because I run a Pennsylvania plate.
That's so true. God, and it's funny because I've always wanted a temporary plate, and I've always wanted to buy a car out of state.
That's on the bucket list, isn't it?
It
when
is.
you're a kid, you're like, one day I will have a temporary plate.
Because then
I do it with Safari,
Yes.
temporary plate, maybe from Pennsylvania. What else? Maybe, astronaut.
moon.
Yeah,
Right,
astronaut.
Can it be an Altima? Can you put this on an Altima?
Oh my God, you just described all of Queens.
Pretty much.
I do like. It's funny.
You go to. So I was gonna say you go out to, because where do you buy a car? You don't buy a car in New York State,
Right.
You buy it in Pennsylvania or Ohio, and then you drive it with a temporary tag down.
You do?
Interstate 80, and you get back here.
You go to Major World.
Major
World. And you just print your own tag at home.
Yes. Major World. God, I haven't listened to radio in so long. I miss those. Tops in the Bronx. Tops in the Bronx.
Oh my God, this is amazing. This reminds me. Do you ever watch Channel 35? In the 90s,
Channel
it was
30.
all like sex ads, and then Robin Bird.
God. I remember Channel 1.
There was an amazing one for like a gay hang-up called The Dungeon. And my friend would always record the ad and then leave it on my work voicemail. And I remember it so clearly. Because I'd go, I've got a message. And then I put on speaker. And then he'd be like, I am the dungeon master. Massive quads, meaty pecs. Let's go down. And it was there were all these amazing ads on Channel 35 in the 90s, sex ads.
I'm so glad that I mark this as explicit when I upload these podcasts, by the way. Like I'm so glad I remember to do that.
The 90s in New York were so much fun. I mean, starting in...
You were in New York in the 90s, right?
In 88.
88?
Yeah. 88 through... Oh, shit.
Through now?
Well,
Are you still
no.
there?
Well, I'm outside. I'm in New Rochelle. I'm in New Rochelle for 20 years. So, like, I don't even... You can't really call me a New Yorker, even though I'm right next to the Bronx. Like, I'm literally... like, I could throw a rock and hit the Bronx. But I'm a suburbanite
Which you do.
now. Yeah. But
Cardiovascular. It's like a workout.
It's a bit of a workout. And the Bronx deserves it. Let's face it, the Bronx deserves it.
It deserves rocks thrown at it.
No, I love the Bronx. The Bronx is the underappreciated borough.
Next to Staten Island.
Actually, no. Can we get your borough rankings?
Borough rankings.
I didn't even know Brooklyn was a place. I thought it was mythology. I thought it was a myth, like sea dragons, like Donald Trump's business acumen.
There be dragons, right? That's on the map with the wind.
That's right. The little cherub puffing wind. Yeah, that is Brooklyn.
Because I grew up. My family was from the Bronx, so the Bronx has to be high. Really?
Yeah.
What part?
It's a small part with this accent.
Well, I was gonna
Unknown.
Is there a part of the Bronx that has
that is England? That is forever England. It's like Downton Abbey in the Bronx. That's where I grew up.
It's because it's the poshest
That's
part
right.
of the Bronx.
With the chrome fence, the steel fence. I read oh, sorry, man. I interrupted. I've had way too much matcha already.
I haven't even started. I'm still on my can of coffee.
You were about to ranking
the boroughs.
Yeah.
It's still Manhattan because I spent the most time there, and so it's Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island.
Right.
And I only put Queens below You know what?
Queens has amazing
fuck
food.
Brooklyn. I love Queens.
There's good food there, right?
And I'm closer to Queens than I am to Brooklyn now. So I'm like 10 minutes from Forest Hills, right? So I can just pop over the bridge and go to, Sunnyside and go and get the best Indian food and the best,
Indian
But
food.
wait, Staten Island's still last place?
Staten Island, sorry, Staten Island. I don't know what to do there.
Italian food.
I mean, yeah, but there's Italian food everywhere.
You could do
You're
burnouts.
going to go all the way to Staten Island for Italian. Or name the place. Where would you go tomorrow or later today if someone said
massive quads.
I mean, like
I don't go to Staten Island.
see exactly right. Why would you?
I drive past it.
It's too far. It's too far. It's too hard
Everything
to
is,
get to.
but the thing, what's funny about New York? Everything is too far. If it's 2 blocks past your house, it's too far.
One thing about Staten Island is one thing.
If I may say, if I may interject, sir.
Staten Island had one hardcore club, and I say that in the punk rock.
Not
way.
in the massive quads.
Not in the massive quads way.
Right.
Because there was back in the late 80s, there was still that sort of Bad Brains influenced New York hardcore scene, the Cro-Mags, the Crumbsuckers, the 7 Seconds, all that stuff.
Wasn't the Cro-Mag a donut?
That's the
a Crow Nut.
Oh, that's
Cro
right.
Nut.
Sorry. The Cronuts are amazing.
I think Cro-Mags fans will probably
Cro-Mags
come
fans
and
will-
set
are
you
getting
on fire
fired.
now.
I know. I was just joking, guys. Just joking.
And there was one club in Staten Island, and we went there once. We drove out there, and
Were you a young punk kid?
I was a young punk kid, but the New York hardcore scene was mostly Bridge and Tunnel.
Right.
So it
really?
was a lot of kids from outer boroughs coming into the clubs either in the city, and then eventually I was there, but it was a lot of kids from Queens, kids
Right.
from the Bronx, kids from a little bit of Brooklyn, not as much, but maybe south, sort of out
Downton Abbey in the Bronx.
The
a lot of
Downton
kids.
Abbey.
They would shop in in carriages.
Well, that was crazy because everybody there had these giant mohawks and stuff through their noses and everything.
Did you have any of that business?
No, I wasn't that. We were sort of thrash crossover into that. So anyway,
Was it the thrash emo cocktail?
it was a thrash hardcore cocktail.
Wait, is thrash different from hardcore?
Yeah.
See,
Thrash was
I'm just such an old geezer.
Thrash
Now,
was
what
sort
about
of-
Beethoven?
Beethoven would have been thrash of the classical thrash.
Yeah, that's. I was as a youth. I was a bit of a punk, and I had this really ridiculous flat top. It was New York, the bird song of New York. And then I tried to dye it blonde, but I fucked it up, and it was like this horrible gingery orange. It was really unappealing.
What were the bands? What were you listening to
In the
at that
80s,
age?
and as a youth, when I was really into punk, I was really into the political aspect of punk music.
Right.
So it was all The Clash, of course, Stiff Little Fingers.
Oh yeah.
God, I'm having The Jam. I love The Jam.
The Jam. The
Even
Jam
though
was
that's not really
fantastic.
punk, but I just loved it. They were
It's interesting
amazing.
you should say that because I would say
Well, they would consider themselves mods,
yeah. But it's funny
but
because
it was really political.
from here,
Right,
They
from
were
the distance.
they were part of the same scene. Yeah.
But it's interesting because I grew up with the idea of punk being super political when I came here and listened to what you guys call punk rock.
Right.
To me, that didn't feel like English punk at all. It was a different thing.
No, because the West Coast brought in. It's funny because
The Cronuts,
the Cronuts were
the double glazed.
the Double Glazed was their EP, wasn't it?
That's right. That hit single Sprinkles.
Yes.
I've ruined everything now. Get out, Phil.
Also, we are now very far down
far
the river
wait,
from.
so let's
I was in
bring it back.
Jalopnik in 2004.
And now I love Cronuts. So let's.
All right, so
okay.
bringing it back. So back to my 18 years. Well, 2004. I guess that is still 18 years ago.
Still.
I left a career. I was working for IBM from another company. I was a supplier of surveys to IBM. Yeah, the IBM's
So very close to the automotive world, really. Yeah.
Well, no. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No,
Well, cars need computers to run.
Well, that's true. That's true. It was in the
I
OBD
guess.
era. It was actually kind of close.
Down with the OBD.
Well,
Sorry, it's
you
like
kn- you know me.
Tourette's.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like see, we complete each other.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So I ended up, I landed there after the .com bust, right? And I was doing, I was working for the Systems and Technology Group at IBM. Sorry, I keep knocking my watch, which we can talk about later.
I'd love to.
I was doing surveys for their hardware group, which was the least important, most important, but least sexy part of IBM.
Because IBM was super sexy in the early
It was
zeros.
so sexy. Everybody,
I mean, the amount of ladies you could meet when you said you worked at IBM in the 2000s.
They went from requiring a suit to like no shirt. Like just nobody wore shirt.
No shirt, but a bow tie.
Yes,
Chippendale style.
Chippendale,
That's
yeah.
right.
But everybody, even the women.
This is how Apple took over the market, by the way.
It's incredible.
They were like, oh, we don't want to do business with these people.
So I was there, and from my previous life, I worked at a company called Jupiter Research, and that was.
I remember that.
Do you really remember?
Yeah, I know.
Jupiter?
Well, I know that name for some reason.
Well, Jupiter ended up. So we did a lot of the research that startups in Internet 1.0 used to justify getting money. So they would
justify populating their offices with beanbags
exactly.
and ping pong tables
and Aeron chairs.
That's right. Remember after the .com collapse, there was a massive glut of Aeron chairs for sale.
It was incredible. It was incredible. They were like $4. They went from $1,000 to $4.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I was at IBM and I needed to make a change. So I had known the Gawker guys from just sort of from being in that scene, man.
It was a scene.
It was quite a scene, man.
Right.
The Internet 1.0, there were a lot of parties, and
right.
I needed to find a way to get into a new industry where the parties would be just as good as the early internet parties.
And you'd be invited to them.
And I'd be invited to them.
Right.
Right. Well, but the Internet 1.0 thing was Jupiter was invited to all the parties. I didn't know who the hell I was. I would show up and there'd be a coked up kid from JP Morgan going, I'm totally starting. I'm leaving this company. I'm totally starting forksandknives.com. This is going to be my next thing. Knives and forks.
And he'd gotten the web address and he'd sell it later for like $4 million, right?
Yes, that's the one good thing that happened.
Yeah.
But back then, like everybody on Wall Street wanted to start something in the internet, and so I did get to meet a lot of crazy people back then. But anyway, washed out of that into a very staid kind of technology-focused Dilbert kind of job.
Right.
And so I needed to get out of there, and I found out that Gawker wanted to start a car blog. And so I just sent an email to Nick Denton, who was started Gawker back then. I mean,
yeah, he was the king of the empire.
He was the king of the empire.
Yeah.
And he just said to me, here are the keys. Give me 2 weeks worth of posts about cars. And I did, and they all sucked. And it was all, back then it was mostly curation though. So which made it like, I would just find things. Right. I'd go to the car lounge like I did every day anyway, and I'd find shit that was on the car lounge or...
Wait, is the car lounge a website?
The car lounge used to be a...
Is this an internet website?
Yeah, well, this is where Matt comes in, because Matt and I were both... Well, the car
everyone's
lounge...
smoking hookahs. Bro, come on in.
Yeah, it was an opium den.
That's what it sounds like. Everyone's on like couches, but lounging. Welcome to the car lounge, bro.
Yeah. The car lounge was a general interest forum that was founded by the guys who did VW Vortex, yes.
Okay.
And also Audi World or Quattro World, whichever one of those. But they were it was mostly Volkswagen people. It was mostly guys like, were you in the Volkswagen scene?
I was.
Back then? Yeah,
I was.
I could see that.
Yeah.
But it was very folksy. But it was cool. Like there was other stuff and people would talk about other things. And like that was one of the places where I would curate to. And then I found that there was a site called World Car Fans.
I've got to say the names were not as good as they are now.
But they were, they said what they were. World Car Fans.
What was that all about?
So what they were sort of
fans
weird,
of cars across the
from
world.
the world, right?
Wow,
there were a couple of guys from Jersey that ended up in Finland with some guys from Finland that they started this site in Finland. Yeah, I don't know their story, and I haven't talked to them in years and years, but they were I didn't have any connections to the PR people back then, so I didn't get any of the press releases. So, but they did. So all I would have to do in the morning was see what World Car Fans put up, and they had just whatever the press releases.
So
came
you
out
would
that
just
day.
sweep everything from World Car Fans into the Jalopnik site.
I mean, I would
more or
pick
less.
from there, yeah. But I
would
mean,
curate.
I would curate,
Yeah.
but they always got a link, and I
Right.
eventually met them, and they were great. And they, we were sort of like early bloggers, It's kind of
So I mean, it was much less frenzied, right?
in the very very beginning was
Right.
much less frenzied. It would become hugely frenzied
Right.
later on.
Do you still run Jalopnik, or no? You don't do.
Oh no, I haven't had anything
Not
to do
since
with
the
them.
lacrosse career has taken
No,
off
exactly.
in Long
Although
Island.
I did, so I left in 2007.
I do a lot of deep research on my guests.
amazing.
Yeah,
Spinelli.
your background check was thorough.
That was
It was
awesome.
very.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was
So you're still there, right? You're still
Yeah.
there.
So how is Jalopnik these days?
It's great. Yeah, I mean,
Say hi to Nick Denton for me when you see him. How's Gorky still running that, right? I'm actually stuck in 05.
that's exactly. Yeah. So that's how it started. I couldn't hire anybody in the beginning, so I had to run this entire site myself, and was basically just me doing hot takes and writing stuff all day long. And I'm sure if you went back to the original stuff, they were terrible. It was really just me trying to fill an entire. Speaking of fill, I had to fill an entire day's worth of car content, and it was fun and tough and crazy and sort of a weird bit of.
Yeah, but you've created something that still exists today, which is kind of amazing.
It is kind of amazing. Oh, it's very different
Right.
than it was in the beginning. But anyway, so I stayed there until 2007, and I left because, speaking of frenzied, by that time we had gotten to the point where we were growing by being first to stories, to big
Right.
stories. And so we would go to a car show, and we'd have to like I remember we went to the Tokyo Auto Show to see the
See cars.
to see cars, right? It was the R35 GTR.
Okay.
R35.
Yeah.
R35 GTR was coming out for the first time. So I camped out at the Nissan booth 2 hours before the reveal,
Yeah.
on my knees in front of. Yeah,
Do you have to be on your knees?
praying.
I mean,
He was
No, I didn't
praying.
need to be on my knees.
But
I
it
was
was
on my
like you
knees
thought it would help.
just because I figured.
You
Yeah,
look-
but just
look,
in case.
You look different from all the other people camped out. We'll take that guy who's on his knees.
But we were jammed up. It was sort of like being back in the hardcore scene at some club. We were just jammed up against the.
Was there
front.
moshing and spitting? Was there spitting in the hardcore mosh
No,
scene?
no, not in America.
That was in England.
Yeah, it was England.
People would spit at each other. I remember that.
I think
it
there
was weird.
Amer-
Sorry, I'm totally.
The
I'm just
American
totally
scene it was 14-year-old kids from Brooklyn or Queens that would just punch you in the face.
okay.
That's what would happen.
So this is what was happening at Tokyo.
Yeah, so
Okay.
things like that. So we had to get. So then the car would come out, I'd take a bunch of photos, get the basics, and then race the guys from Autoblog back down to the press room, and get the post up first. And then if we got it up first,
just from a technological standpoint, you would have to log on. There was no with the phone.
Oh, no,
sending-
no
I mean,
phones.
but it's kind of
that's true,
fascinating. It's
yeah.
kind of fascinating to think about
is,
that,
yeah.
how that works now, because you would have had no advantage now.
no,
Right?
no,
But
advantage.
then you have a you have if you can get to the desktop first,
Well, that's
it's
a
kind
great-
of fascinating,
That's
right?
a great point, because we were the equivalent of social media,
Right.
and social media took over because phones became so immediate, right? Somebody there would just take a video of the whole thing,
Right.
or just show it live
Right.
on
you'd live stream it.
just live stream it.
Yeah.
But back then, you'd run. God, it sort of feels like
Get
the
to the
40s.
telegram office.
Exactly, it feels like the 40s.
But it is fascinating when you think about it. It's such a short time ago how sort of physically different things were in terms
Yes.
of what you had to do to get something done.
I had my titanium laptop chained to the desk back down in the press room because they would steal those things.
Right.
And everybody stole everything back then. I guess. Because I guess there weren't videos everywhere. So you had to. I had a lock on my laptop down.
Yeah, I
and
remember
it was
those.
chained around a chair or something.
Sure.
Whatever it was, but but we would have to get it up there first, because then we would get picked up by Farc. Remember Farc?
No.
Yeah, nobody remembers Farc. Do you remember Farc?
I do remember Farc.
Farc
Isn't that
would,
the Freedom Fighting Army in Guatemala or something? Or?
It is, but spelled differently.
Yeah.
It's FARC.
Okay. Same guys, but they also did internet stuff
Yes,
for cars.
They raised the money for the revolution.
They did an IPO, went public in the late 90s. Okay.
This was FARK.
Yeah, okay. Because it was a branding problem.
yes, right.
Like, guys,
exactly.
guys, we have to change the last letter.
But there was Farc, and there was like Delicious. There were a bunch of, and there were a few others. Like I'm forgetting now, but they were aggregator sites.
Yeah.
And if you got on the aggregator sites, it would just bounce your traffic up through the.
I remember this because when I was as a photographer, if you got on those sites, it would go viral immediately.
Yes.
But then what was interesting is that virality, if that's a word, would last so much longer.
Yeah.
Like I remember doing projects and them going viral, and I would be getting for weeks. I'd be getting traffic and emails and interest and all the rest of it. And now it's a
nothing.
day maybe.
But that's how Jalopnik started to grow. Its first growth spurt was on the back of aggregators.
Sure.
And we would see after an auto show, we would have a new plateau. Like this is the great thing about being a brand new thing and a brand new
in a brand
world.
new technology.
Yeah, in a brand new technology, because we could actually see these plateaus happen, and we were like, "Wow, we're growing this thing," and you can actually see where the audience is sticking around.
Isn't it fascinating to have the memory of the dawn of the internet in your mind? Like you have, like when I talk to my kid, I explain how things were pre-internet. I mean, she just can't, and she can't understand that. How the idea of like instant communication, all that kind of stuff, is just totally alien and anathema to her.
Well, it's so
but even
interesting.
that kind of the way the blogs worked or the aggregators worked, and how the long tail would last so much longer, all that stuff.
It's incredible because I was in journalism school in the late '80s, and there was no thought to what would come in literally 5 years later. There was a thought, though. I mean, there was.
Well, also because it's fun because I don't think. Well, first of all, people didn't. There was no idea that existed. But even in the 90s, I was watching on YouTube an interview with Bill Gates and Letterman. And Gates is explaining to Letterman what the internet is. Yeah. And Letterman's totally making fun of it.
I love that one. Because I just saw that too. And he's saying, "You mean like a magazine?" Yeah,
like he's like, I mean, and then that felt, well, I went down a wormhole of other kind of internet explanation and news stories from the 90s. And people just no one knew what it was going to be.
No. You know what though? David Bowie.
Yes.
He knew.
David Bowie knew.
Yeah, there's like a very well-known clip of him where
you're right. Yeah. Yeah, but he knew everything.
He did.
Well, that's it's interesting because the whole idea of networking was already in the tech vernacular, right?
Sure.
It was really us
normies. But that was computers speaking to each other more.
Yes.
I mean, I remember in like 1991 teaching myself, was it Unix?
Could have been.
I can't remember what it was, but and getting on the internet, and there was no, and I was logging onto all these different servers. It was like, I think it was the Whole Earth server in San Francisco, all this kind of, and it was fascinating because there was no graphical, there was no browser. I remember when Netscape. Do you remember when Netscape showed up?
I got one before that.
What was that?
The pipeline. So so not to get too nerdy, because Matt's like, get back to cars.
No,
we've just lost the whole audience.
Well, what's funny is there was something before Netscape, because you needed a layer below the browser.
Yeah.
So Pipeline was a New York-based IP. What were they called back then?
Was it New York Online? There was a New York Online. I remember using New York Online, which was
but Pipeline was the first one that built a browser that went on top of they had their own
How
stack.
Fascinating. Okay.
So they were the first ones to do an entire stack that was just the internet. And I remember going, like, the thing that put them out of business was when AOL opened up to the internet, right? And now all of a sudden you can get to the internet from your AOL.
Do you remember
browser.
images loading at 14.4? Like the bands.
You're talking about porn.
Yeah.
Of course, right?
You're trying to load. If one would be interested in porn, for instance. Yeah, I mean, it was just the whole. I remember in the late 90s thinking how great it would be to be able to print out photographs on a printer.
Yeah.
Like, how cool would that be?
I worked somewhere, we had a $10,000 printer to do that.
Right. It's still probably, and now it looks like.
It was the laser printer, but it was $10,000. I think it was an Apple. Apple did a bunch of weird shit back then. But anyhow. But yeah, I mean
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Do you own any old pieces of technology? Like, for instance, I have an Apple Newton.
Oh, do you really? I have the book that they did about the Newton.
It's not the same Spinelli. Spinelli, lacrosse champion from Long Island.
There's also a wrestler named Mike
Is there?
Spinelli also.
Oh,
yeah.
that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
You don't own any old tech? Do you have any interest in it? If there's one piece of old tech you'd like to own.
I've never had enough room
But it's small
to save.
thing.
I
mean, it's not like a Newton's like room size, like a Univac.
I always threw everything out, and I had a Palm Pilot.
Oh yeah.
That was probably the coolest thing I had of that era. I did have once I got a laptop and I had the plug-in for the Wi-Fi, you had to plug the card into the side of the...
That's right, yeah.
So that was cool. No, I mean, I have a thing called a Neo. Do you know what a Neo is? And I use this a lot now.
No? What is that?
The Neo is it's a keyboard with a little bit of memory and a small screen.
Oh, I had something like that in college. There was like a precursor to a computer.
Yes, and they did it for the education market, right? So you could give kids these, and you can. It's a word processor.
I do know what that is. Was that? I think
it runs on 3 AA batteries.
Yeah. I do know what that is.
And it's got a full size keyboard, and you can save an entire document, the text of it,
right?
And there are like 6 channels, and each one you can save like.
Wait, you still use this?
I use it when I am getting overwhelmed and I'm not. I'm trying to write something, and all I'm doing is just like going down rabbit holes.
Why don't you just go down to like a quill and ink?
You know, because I hate writing.
That really focuses.
I hate writing longhand.
I can't actually read my own writing anymore. It's like a doctor having a seizure.
Right.
It's incomprehensible.
So bring it to a CVS and see what drug they give you.
Yeah, it's like prescription roulette. We should do that, and you have to take it. Whatever they give you, you have to take it. You have to take it.
Take the whole bottle.
Yeah, the whole bottle in one go. All right, sorry, man. We've just gone way down a sorted rabbit hole. So Jalopnik.
But it makes a lot of sense because I've never worked at a car magazine that was anything but a startup.
Right.
So I've always been involved in whatever the technology was. Actually, except for 0 to 60, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Well, what happened after Jalopnik then?
Jalopnik,
the homeless period.
So I got burned out of there because the covering auto show stuff, making sure that everything it was like this constant churn of news stuff that had to come out during the day.
Also, I imagine in some ways there's not a lot of creativity involved.
Well,
basically, it's like deadline journalism.
It was deadline
or scoop journalism.
Yeah, and it was scoop rewriting things. I mean, it just got to be too gamified for me. Right. I mean, at the moment, and it's not like I didn't have anything particularly against it, but I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And the good thing about
you just wanted to dance.
I just wanted.
Is that
to
so
dance.
wrong?
No, is it really? I mean, my feet hurt, and I just wanted to dance. No, but so I left. And the good thing is, like, I was really lucky because Jalopnik was fairly high profile, and I started getting a lot of offers to do other things.
Hedge funds.
Yes, mostly things that paid a giant amount of money. No, that's not true at all. But I did get a radio show on.
Did you?
Yeah, on Sirius.
No shit.
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
Right.
How long did that go for?
About 2 years, maybe.
This is weird. This didn't show up in my deep research.
I know, because nobody remembers it.
I was just because I was researching the wrestling stuff.
Well, a friend of mine, John Wild do you know John Wild? He used to.
So.
I don't know where he is
but
now.
I bet that was a good show because you're a very amusing geezer.
Well, I think it was fun. Well, so this is what it was. It was for Maxim magazine. So I was writing a little bit for Maxim magazine, just doing some car stuff for John. And John was a features editor or something.
Right.
And John said, "Hey, I'm going to do a radio show on Maxim Radio, Sirius 108."
The man of a thousand voices. Massive quads.
This is also, by the way, this is when like Maxim, FHM,
yes,
like
they were huge.
Lad Mags were like a huge
Lad Mags
deal.
they were huge. They had Castrol as a sponsor.
So how was that not a success?
And so Well, it was.
It was
check
you.
this out.
Was it
So
you? It was you, wasn't it?
well, so John and I started. We did like 2 shows, and he's like, "Hey, I'm leaving," and I was like, "Wow, what was it? Something I said? Was it one of my funny voices that I tried to do?" I was
You
like,
sniffed the
I know,
armpits.
we're pretty close in the. It's like God. No, he was moving to another magazine.
Okay.
I think he went to GQ from there or something.
Right.
So I had a radio show, and I was like, geez, what am I going to do? So I did a few, and I was kind of cool. I had guests. I had the ice road truckers on.
Oh, that's cool.
Because Sirius would they had the people that would come through and go on the radio shows. So I had this kind of list of people that were coming on. I was like, yeah, I want the ice road truckers. I want.
What were they like? For
They
people
were
who,
great.
For
They
people
were
who don't
great.
know, the Ice Road Truckers was a reality show in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, this was, yeah.
And it was basically people was it in Canada?
Isn't it still on?
I don't know. Maybe
I think it's still a thing.
Is it
Yeah,
still a
it's
thing?
in Canada, but yeah, guys that would drive across the
Frozen Lake or something,
yeah,
right?
frozen whatever that was.
I really was
Tundra,
into
not
that show.
Tundra,
Something.
whatever it is. But
Yeah.
but it was a good show, and they were great. They were fantastic. But as it turns out, so you know who was listening to Sirius a lot back then was truckers.
Right.
So we would open up the phone lines, and it would always be like some trucker was driving across Canada.
Right.
So somehow Canadian truckers were like our main audience. So we would get on the line with Canadian truckers, and they would.
That sounds amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah, I mean, it'd be like, "Where are you?" I'm about 35 miles out of Saskatoon,
and then
like-
that was it.
and then they would just break out. Yeah,
they do.
Advertisers always are chasing Canadian trucker
Canadian
audience.
trucker audience.
That's the most
really-
lucrative demographic. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're after.
But so eventually I wanted to have, because I always wanted like something like the Stern Show, because I learned everying I know about media. I
At least
learned
you
from
were
the Stern
you
Show.
were aiming low.
Well, no, but the Stern Show.
I actually think he's a great interviewer.
Well, I do too, and that's the thing is I learned everything about sort of buddy media
Right.
from Stern. Right, it was him, and he had his people, and it was sort of this, and it drew you into this kind of family,
Right.
kind of.
Well, he created this sort of
Workplace
circus
comedy.
that you became part of when you went on there.
Yes, right, exactly. And so I always wanted to create a kind of workplace comedy as a media property,
Sure.
and that's what we did at Jalopnik. And I think the writers that we hired, or that I hired, or whatever was, because I guess it was just me doing it. I always wanted to foster
But you
that
did,
kind of
because
environment.
Jalopnik then had a very distinctive voice.
Yeah,
And,
I think
presumably
eventually
generated, in mostly by you, sort of directly. I
Well-
mean, it's a sort of a top-down thing.
kind of. Although I hired people I like to read.
Right.
And I hired people who were characters and people who were not shy about sort of putting
Being
stuff out
themselves.
there and being themselves. Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Right.
So that was what I wanted to do on the radio show. So I got Matt Farah.
Right. Who's that guy?
That guy, right?
He went nowhere.
Exactly, right. So Matt and Mike Musto, who I guess he's
I've
at
met him.
Hemmings now. Yeah, you know Mike.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. So we sort of created a little bit of that, and we were there for a while. And then
that seems baffling that didn't really succeed
well,
massively.
the channel, it really was about filling the space, right? Because I mean, on satellite, it's a little bit different. Back then, when you got a brand that sponsored an entire entire slot of programming, like
Right.
Maxim did, it was up to Maxim to fill it, and it was sort of like, I don't know what they call it, not a time buy, kind of maybe a time buy, where like the brand runs the show, and then so I like it was never going to be anything outside Maxim, and when Maxim dropped
Right.
the channel,
Right.
that was the end of the show.
Right.
We could have pursued it.
I
But
love that idea of creating a circus.
Yeah. I've always wanted to have a circus. That would be amazing.
That's on your bucket list.
Yeah.
Right after, what was the other thing?
What before the going to the moon and,
Yeah.
and
What was that? I forgot what that was.
the other one was.
Hashtag geezer brain.
Yes.
All right. So okay. So then there was the radio show
the
on
radio
Sirius.
show.
Then
So at the same time, I ended up at a video startup called Next New Networks.
right.
And Next New Networks had an interesting business model, which was that they were going to hire a bunch of really creators before they were called creators, right? Video producers, and they would create a day's worth of programming. I don't know if it was a day, but they would just create a bunch of programming, and then this was right before YouTube became the predominant channel where you would see all this stuff, because at the time there were like 10 other competitors. There was one called OGO and Odeo, and like I don't even remember half of them. There was Vimeo, but they all ended in EO because I guess everybody thought that it was because of video.
Like I something.
Yes, exactly.
iPhone, whatever, iCar.
Right.
Right.
But there were a bunch of them. So the business model, they called it, and boy, all you need to raise money is a great word to get people's imaginations.
So what was the word?
Super distribution.
Oh, wow. Take my money now.
Yes, exactly. So the whole idea of super distribution was to create programming and put it out either on, with your own player or on a provider like YouTube and Vimeo and Odeo and whatever was left. And track it. You could track it, and then you could create this sort of cable-sized audience that you could sell against.
Right.
And your sales team would then go out and sell against all of these separate things. Of course, like a minute later, YouTube became the predominant
I remember
provider.
I shot those two guys who started YouTube for GQ.
Really?
And it's so interesting. I shot them. I met them, and they had just signed the deal with Google.
Oh God!
They had sold for 1.2 billion, and I said to them, because I was really interested, I said, "But how does it feel?" Because it's very rare in life that you know that on an exact date, your life will be completely different.
Right.
And because the deal was supposed to go through, they were supposed to sign like the following Tuesday, and on that Tuesday they were going to be zillionaires.
Right.
And I asked them, I said, "What does that feel like to know that next Tuesday you will never have to worry about anything? You can buy whatever you want, you can do whatever you want." And they were like, "I know," which is a bit of a disappointment. But I was really fascinated with that idea. Anyway, so that's neither here nor there.
Well, but that's the kind of thing that everybody was going for back then.
Right.
So that
because those deals were always happening.
Yes, and that is really sort of why I didn't ever really want. There was a sense of ownership to shit like that. That's why I didn't want a traditional job.
Right.
And it came out of working for Jupiter back in the 90s, and it came out of ending up at IBM and seeing how people who don't own the thing that they do, and most people don't own the thing that they do. And I think that's something that, either you're tuned into or you're not, or you care about or not. Some people, it doesn't matter to most people.
It always mattered to me. But I've come from a fine art background, so I've been making art, so that there's clearly like an ownership stake happening in that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it matters. I mean, ideas are currency. Ideas are worth money.
Yeah. And so, that's the thing is of course, all of the equity I had in Gawker is now in Hulk Hogan's son's
Lambo
Supra.
collection.
It's Lambo collection. So there was that.
You know what I find interesting
terrible.
is when companies buy other companies, and then suddenly, like a year later, that technology doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
Like, didn't Time Warner buy, didn't AOL buy Moviephone? Remember Moviephone?
I think they did. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Moviephone.
That's pretty good. That's really good.
I shot that guy for a magazine once, and the guy who started it did the voice.
Oh, that's brilliant. See, that was back
But that was a technology.
Exactly.
For people who don't know, Moviephone was in the 90s. You'd call up and it would give you movie times and listings. But then internet.
But that's funny because before the internet, the big entrepreneurial move was something with the phone or with long distance.
Right.
I wrote a guide to, and when I was in journalism school, I wrote a guide to getting the best deal on long distance. And I wanted
You must
to
have
sell
been a
it.
great dinner guest.
Well,
Let's get Spinelli. We can talk about long distance rates.
No, but what I did was I had seen a commercial for a guy that talked about finding a product and then putting ads in magazines.
Oh, I know.
What was that guy's name?
It was an infomercial.
It was an infomercial,
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to because
you were that guy.
Well, I wanted to be. I wanted something that would be something that I could sell that I thought people would buy, and it was something that I could actually do, which was the writing stuff. and the researching
So
stuff.
going back to owning intellectual property or your own ideas. So are there ideas that you own now that you run that I haven't discovered through my exhaustive research of you?
That's a good point. So I am right now. So I mean, if you separate owning, sort of having equity in
Hulk Hogan's son, Supra.
and other things like that, right? I mean, other things that maybe he doesn't own. Well, we'll see who owns, but like, yeah, I mean, there's equity in previous ventures, let's say, that I have. It's not a. I don't stop working, right? But it's part of, it's part of the
journey.
Part of the journey. Yeah.
So what are you now? What are you doing right now? Right now, Spinelli.
Yes.
Wrestling star.
So, well, actually, wait a minute. There's
more, but wait, there's more.
At the same time,
I didn't realize that you were a man of 1,000 voices.
Oh, well.
It's amazing.
You're missing
Wait
out.
a minute. Hold on a second there, Phil. Just a minute. Just a darn minute.
That's amazing, man.
While I was doing the radio show, I was also writing freelance, and I had met Brian Scotto because he was starting a magazine called 0 to 60,
Right.
and he sent me an email at Jalopnik, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds like a pretty cool idea." And then I did a sort of a review of the first issue, and I remember he was pissed off because I had one.
Wait, this is a regular magazine or internet magazine?
It's a
real
print
paper
magazine.
magazine. Okay.
Matt was the managing editor. But I was sort of I was burying the lead.
What's going on?
I was burying the lead as a dramatic pause to talk about this.
You've been bamboozled. This is just a reunion
It's
show.
a reunion show, yeah.
Other people are going to show up in a minute.
Exactly.
Hey!
But it was so funny because Scotto, I mean, a man of a million ideas, right? He when I met him face to face, he remembered the one line in my review that was not perfectly glowing. And it was really funny.
I love people like that. You'll just say, you'll compliment an idea, and then there'll be one tiny thing buried in there. Like, I'm not sure about the typeface, and they'll be like, and you're out of the will.
Yeah, I think I think that I felt that he and Matt by extension had chosen these sort of obvious cars to start with, and which I don't know if that was necessarily a dig. I mean, it was just
Yeah,
like
it was.
there are cars.
Yes, it was.
But you have to do that. Like I didn't look. I mean,
I'm the same way, and I have no business sense. I'm always, when people show me cars they're designing and stuff, I'm always like, yeah, but why can't you make it float or whatever?
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
right, it was that. Yeah,
and
it was that.
because I'm always because it's the instinct as an artist to want to say something new, but new is often not financially viable or lucrative.
Right. Well, it's
old
funny.
is, in fact, or familiar is usually much more financially viable.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention art. I mean, we'll talk about 0 to 60 in a second, but my dad was an artist, right?
Oh,
and that's where I came from. And he went to Art Students League. He studied with George Groats, and it was sort of a...
I don't know who George Groats.
He was
George Groats?
One of the German Impressionists.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah. And so he wanted that to work, but didn't really pursue it in the way, because he had a family by then, and it was tough for him. So
being an artist is super lucrative and very easy. To make a lot of money.
He didn't. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
sure. He ended up working in the Diamond District. So it was as a jewelry designer and sales guy and street. When you work in one of those districts, a lot of that is like making deals and doing stuff. Yeah. So that was where. So I think that might be where it sort of comes from. Where I'm nervous about working for something that's too big,
right,
and too out of control. But anyway, so
unlike internet startups, which are super regimented and formalized.
To a certain point, there's always a point in its maturity cycle that it becomes not much fun to work.
That's
for,
right,
and that's when you got to get out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I met Scotto, and he goes, "Hey, we're doing this magazine. Why don't you come down, meet the rest of the guys, and write some stuff?" And I ended up, hanging out with Matt and the rest, and Tony Harmer. This like fucking amazing team of magazine people. And I'm like, shit, you can still do a magazine And because I was a magazine geek, like I
Right.
loved the spreads. I loved photography.
Sure.
I mean, I just didn't. I wanted to see 0 to 60
Are magazines
work.
still? I mean, I feel like have they kind of disappeared?
Well, it's the candles, right? So they're just fancier and cheap and
What?
more expensive.
Candles? What?
What's the candle economy? It goes right. No, but I always say
Well,
this.
I want to hear
This
this.
is
I
one
don't
of
know.
those-
Wait, this is to be like the tulip thing.
I don't know what that
Sorry,
metaphor is. Is this a Yankee candle? You're a Yankee Candle fan?
In the old days, right? Candles were how you saw, right? You had
Okay.
you lit the house with candles, right?
Okay.
They were a utility.
Yeah.
And then eventually it became the thing you pull out when
I
it's
see,
when
okay.
it's a fancy occasion,
Okay.
right?
So you're saying the magazines that
Magazines
exist
are-
now are the fancy ones,
Yes, and they used to
like
be
000.
Yeah, exactly. They're better. They smell better. Sorry, that's
Well,
still the
000
candle.
is a for people who don't know, is a Porsche magazine.
Yeah.
Beautifully done. I mean, really exquisite typography, photography, the paper stock, all this kind of stuff that makes it sort of a fetish object.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a totemic piece.
Yeah.
Is it, what they've become
totemic.
though, it's almost like it's a coffee table flex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Coffee table flex.
Well, no, I mean,
This
all right,
is
your buddy,
smash
your watch is getting messed up here, but your buddy Matt Hranick we had on the show,
Yeah,
right,
sure.
with W.M.
Exactly.
Brown. Like, do people actually read it? I hope so, but I think a lot of people just want to have it as like a collectible
Right.
sort of thing.
Well, you're right. It's like a, it's like wearing Nikes. It's a brand that says something about who you are, and you have it out on your table, and that says something about who you are, and people come over.
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, I buy Magneto. I buy what's the other? I mean, 000, and I love those and having them around. I just don't have the space for them, so I always buy a few, and then I never really buy them again.
You buy a few, have people over so they see them,
So they
and
see
then you
them,
throw them out.
And I throw them in the garbage. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, but they are really nice. They're objects to like the paper is really nice, the
Sure.
photography is really nice, and they become this sort of tactile
Sure.
thing. I mean, I don't know what the future for magazines is going to be. I mean, I think maybe they will always be there in some way, and maybe some of them will be vanity projects, some of them will be flexes, and some of the flexes buying them. I mean, like that's kind of the great thing. I mean, but 0 to 60 was this kind of old school magazine dad, right?
Old
Stanley.
School magazine.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Have you had? You just had a. Do you want to go to sleep?
I'd like to go to sleep
Yeah.
now.
Phil, can I go to sleep now? I feel like
But it's this sort
you
of.
just had a brownout.
I did.
You know what that is?
Yes, a
Yeah.
brownout when the lights
When the
go
lights
down a
go,
little bit.
because it's like precursor to the blackout.
Right,
So all the
exactly.
lights dim and you.
Right. But 0 to 60 was this sort of second generation effort of a first generation old school magazine company that grew basically organically. right?
What made that? How was that different in terms of what it was from an old school magazine?
Well, it was different because I think what we were. I think what the sorry.
You wanna go to sleep?
The point of the
It's sleepy nap
whole
time for
point-
Mike.
I would say that Scotto and Matt was there when it was born, so maybe there are other things he'll know. I think that British magazines were always better than American magazines, at least aesthetically for us.
Sure.
So the idea was to take the sort of British magazine aesthetic and add it to the kind of super street and sport compact car.
I mean, God, do you remember the photography in like Car and Driver and stuff?
Well, that was a big differentiator. Like, so 0 to 60 spent a lot of money on photos,
Yeah.
Right.
right, and like gorgeous art layout.
Gorgeous.
No, like
Yeah,
it was
good,
really well done. Always fought for like great paper,
Sure.
like super thick, like real luxurious. Whereas like everything else is basically like.
You see, that's
toilet
interesting
paper.
because that's something that people don't notice until it's not good paper.
Right.
Yes, you're right. That's a negative. It's a sort of a negative thing.
It's just an assumption, and then sometimes you get and like if you look at magazines from the 80s or 90s, the paper stock is terrible.
Yeah,
often. And I mean, I was an art director for a long time, so I noticed stuff like typography and page design, layout design, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to see how people just weren't paying attention for a long time.
Well, it became
it's like car interiors.
Yeah, well,
in the 80s or 90s.
Well, it's also, the business of them became they became part of public companies, right? So what's the first thing you do? You want your margins to be higher,
Right.
So they were already making ridiculously. They were making incredible margins because they were the only game in town for advertising back then. And then they said, okay, well, reduce the paper stock, and now we can. Now we've got to. Well, I don't even know what the margins were.
It's okay if you see the other page through the page you're looking at.
We're at 65%, margin on these things. I mean, it's like they had so much money back then,
Right.
To do stuff. But
So 0 to 60.
well, 0 to 6. Just one last thing on that. There were always guys like Guccione, right?
Right.
That okay, yes, Penthouse, but also Omni. Omni was an incredible magazine. I don't know if
So just for people who don't know, Bob Guccione?
Bob Guccione
was,
Sr.
Senior was the founder of Penthouse magazine, softcore porn mag.
Right.
But then he had an empire.
He had an empire. Yeah.
So Omni was science?
Omni was science fiction.
Oh, yes.
Science fiction and futurism.
That's right.
And it was just it was before there was a Wired.
Right.
Omni was incredible. it was an incredible magazine.
God,
Everybody.
I remember when Wired started, I subscribed to it immediately and I was collecting them all. Because remember they had, who was that guy who did the typography? Who did Ray Gun later?
Yes, that guy. Raygun.
He was a Canadian guy.
Yes, I cannot remember.
Anyway,
his name.
but that was the first magazine that I remember that was radical in terms of typography and just page layout. Often inks, the use of inks, they used metallic inks and fluorescent inks, and often it was really hard to read the articles.
Yes, some of the layouts were like, okay, which Pantone,
Carlson,
which 7 Pantone numbers did? Like they would use the chromaflare, not chromaflare. What was it? The chromy Pantone colors,
Right. Yeah.
Hexachrome.
Yeah.
They'd use like the hexachrome colors and like the real sort of hot.
Was his name
paints
Carlson? Began with C, I feel like.
I think so, but boy, that's a blast from the past.
I know.
I just don't remember but I loved Ray Gun. I loved
Right.
those magazines. Bikini? Did he do Bikini also?
Maybe, yeah.
There were
But
some
that was the
incredible
very
magazines.
beginning of magazines going, oh, we can be design objects.
Yes.
Which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Well, then there was also the EInk cover, which was a huge
Yeah.
deal. But it's like, so you
E-ink.
want to be the internet, but in paper.
But in paper, yeah. That was a weird. So that crossover time when you thought that, like, editors-in-chief thought that they could sort of cross into digital as a magazine. So they would do things like, I think you still see them. QR codes are still there. And obviously like VR stuff. Magazines are doing more VR. Maybe that's the way to cross into, but it's always tough to get people to cross from one medium to another.
Well, also, I think that initially, and I'm not sure what's happening now because I'm such a caveman living in the basement, but they just mimicked the magazine experience, but digitally.
Yes.
There was no sense of, okay, we're going to take it to digital and we're going to evolve what the magazine experience will be.
Well,
Initially.
as Marshall McLuhan once said, the medium is the message.
I'm a huge McLuhan fan,
Okay, so one of the things that I got from him was that whenever there's a new medium, the first thing that people put into it is the previous medium.
Right, that's exactly right.
So that's the thing, and then something
So
happens.
so is there an example now where that's happening?
It's interesting. Okay, so if you look at like television's native format is the commercial,
Sure.
right? It's not the TV show because a TV show is just a theater shown from the back with 3 cameras, right? A sitcom is just a theater with 3 cameras.
Sure.
But the commercial is the thing. So
You're saying that's the native language of
commercials
TV.
are the native language of television.
Okay.
So if you think of that, I don't know if you agree with that.
No,
but
that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way. In the way that they can be entirely non-linear or
yes, and they tell a story using there's tropes that they designed.
Right. So could you have is there a TV show that's using the language of the commercial for 30 minutes?
Well, there were. In the 90s, it's funny because we're so far past, like television has refound itself as in streaming.
Yeah.
Right? Because the quantity has taken over the quality of the narrow scope of what television used to be. And now it's the scope of television is so wide, it can encompass everything. And that's sort of, maybe that's the metaphor is fragmentation. So I don't know. So you're saying your original question was
Who are you? What am I doing here?
Wait. What time is it?
Consult your pocket watch.
Well, it's funny. I feel like in some ways, TikTok, for example,
Right.
TikTok is a native media form. It's not television, right? It's video. It's not.
So do you think TikTok is is what magazines and newspapers were?
Well, it's part of the fragmentation, right? TikTok is a piece of something that would have been part of a greater whole in television, right? It's the essence of something.
Well, yeah, but it seems to me that TikTok has kind of become the most predominant media.
Oh, yeah.
For a certain demographic.
Right, but it's about telling a story in 10 seconds. How many seconds? How many seconds is TikTok?
Varies in length, but
Yeah,
they're
varies in
short.
length. They're
I mean,
very
the idea is
short.
it's
Right.
rapid fire.
Yeah,
No
but-
attention span.
But it still has an arc.
Remember how people used to talk about MTV videos, like the MTV quick cuts? Like
Right.
it was all so choppy, and people were like,
I hate that.
it's all, and now it's getting smaller and smaller.
That's a good point because MTV videos were a native
Sure,
format
language.
for your native language for video. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a great point. And a lot of video producers and directors went to commercials after that.
Right.
So if you look at the pharmaceutical commercials that are everywhere,
Right.
I mean that's a lot.
Side
a lot
effects
of that.
may include diarrhea, nausea,
It's crazy.
fatigue, explosive anus.
Is that what Hype Williams has been up to now?
Yeah, I think Hype Williams that's his thing now. It's hyperforms. Take with food.
I do love all the lists of the side effects because it's everything.
It's amazing. And
May
that's
include
when
death.
It's like media plus lawyers equals.
Right. Yeah. But so in
anyway,
a way,
sorry,
so TikTok is a direct descendant of MTV
Yeah.
music videos. in
Yeah,
a way.
but every in those seconds that you're watching, there's an arc, right? Every TikTok video
Right.
has, well developed or not, it has an arc, and it's the most like when you think about who's producing the best TikTok videos, these are pretty visionary people, and some of them
Right.
are really young, and they've sort of been able to sort of internalize what makes a great story in a very short period of time.
I wonder if it's going to get quicker.
I don't think.
You know what I love is when I've seen people watching videos on like 20% faster speed, whatever that's called. Like
Right.
they'll speed it up and they'll watch it. So I'm wondering if at some point that the way in which we digest videos and/or language will be at like an accelerated speed from normal.
Do you know that perception and retention is better at higher speeds?
Is it?
Yeah. I don't know what the ideal speeds
that's
is, but there's a
interesting.
curve. But
Is this from your research days?
oh yeah. No,
But
it is.
actually that makes sense though, because if like you're like, let's say you go back to school.
Yeah.
That's like a very slow.
The Rodney
speaking-
Dangerfield
Yeah.
film? Comedy?
We're going back to school. Yes. Yes. A great
I'll
film.
tell you.
All right. He gets
triggered
no
this.
respect. He got no respect.
I got no respect.
I actually loved Rodney Dangerfield just because his crazy bulbous
So great.
eyes.
I
Yeah.
love that guy.
But
Yeah.
when you think about like you had to sit through like a lecture, right? And it was like, the rock forms over 6,000 years.
Right.
Like just you don't retain that. Whereas like, hey, rocks are made in 6,000 years. Okay.
What, you mean
Yeah.
if you do it in a Bugs Bunny voice? Then immediate retention.
I mean, yeah.
That's what you're saying. Thank you, Matt, for that keen insight.
Well, you know what though? 1.75x is probably like, yeah. I mean, I watch it. But, you're
so
right.
it's like New Yorker speed.
Yes, New
Right.
Yorker speed. But see, I don't have a naturally. What do you call it?
Whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
Synapses not
Synapses.
firing.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Anyway, I
Don't
don't
sell
know.
yourself short, man.
Sorry.
We believe in you, Spinelli.
But that's an interesting development in this whole kind of digital media sphere, where that'll probably influence the way that people make videos, explainer videos, or teaching.
So I wonder
videos.
what will come after that. Like, I wonder if it'll be VR or augmented or AR.
Well,
and I wonder how that language will then translate. Because that's going to happen at some point. We'll be wearing glasses and then there'll be contact lenses which will project information into space or onto our retinas or whatever it is. And there'll be a language for that too.
Well, you just hit it because it's about the hardware, right?
Right.
It always ends up being about the hardware. So right now, like, what's the latest hardware thing? Is
The Palm
earbuds.
Pilot?
The Palm Pilot. So everything is audio now. So earbuds change the scope of audio or change the
But I feel like that's a very temporary technology because it's visual. Everything has to be visual, don't you think?
Well,
So it has to be.
except for podcasts.
Yeah, well, this is going to be dead in like 2 weeks. I mean, who's listening to the 3 people who are listening? But I do think because it's always visually driven, that it will have to be. I mean, it won't be. Remember Google Glass
Yeah.
and what a disaster that was because people had privacy issues.
Yeah.
Which seem ridiculous to me because everything is. I think that's an older generation's concern in a way, maybe because I feel like everything is so public now.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point. I mean, if it came out now, what would the uptake be? Would it be better? Yeah, I mean, I think it's visual, but I don't think it's necessarily visual because we haven't gotten to short form audio yet. Like we haven't gotten to like this.
So if so we should just speed this podcast up,
Speed it
and
up.
it'll just be
Well, no, but
massively
we
successful.
actually have though.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a terrible example, and I'm embarrassed to say this out loud, but
Be ashamed of yourself.
I'm ashamed to say these words. Lil Pump.
Yes.
Okay, so please explain to the geezer. I know he's a musician, right?
Yeah, so musician, but like all of his songs, and like they did really well. They were like under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And what's the normal length of a song?
3.5, 4
Well,
and a half.
except for punk back in the old days.
Punk songs were always short.
It was
right,
short, yeah.
But like
That's right.
But like Lil Pump came out and he'd have like these like massive songs, but they were like minute 38.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
that's
the whole
interesting.
song.
Okay.
And now I'm embarrassed that people know that
Well,
I know who
it's
Lil Pump is.
But it's
So,
an important. It's
That's
an important
amazing
distinction.
name.
Yeah, Lil Pump.
Is that like a penis pump thing?
I'm
No? I'm just... no?
Not sure.
I don't want to find.
Sure.
See, I don't know what... Because I'm
just
sure...
a
Like,
little
I'm such an old... I'm such a... It's just a small pump. I'm just a small... I'm such a like super Caucasoid geezer that I'm totally unaware of everything that's happening around me. Really. Unless it involves like whale blubber oil lamps.
Which are making a comeback.
Are they? I'm going to bring them back.
Well, the problem with killing whales for their oil is the
whales
whole-
aren't cool with it.
Is they hate that.
The whales aren't into it.
Whales are pissed off.
Which is
at that.
bullshit, man.
Oh, we're
Grow a pair of whales.
this show's getting canceled.
But anyway, but yeah, I mean, so the point of
I guess what I was trying to say with that is I'm just fascinated with all the names like Megan the Stallion. Is I really love that name, and I love that she's got like 3 E's after the. Like,
Right.
I mean, how did that happen? I just find I'm generally obsessed with language, so I love the way like Lil.
Well,
It just sounds. I know it sounds weird, like an old English geezer sings, but you know, Lil Pump or Megan the Stallion.
Well,
I mean, when you say that, do you have to pronounce the extra E's?
well, no. See, that's the thing. Well, what's interesting
just
is that
curious,
she's
like-
a woman and
Yeah.
stallions are male.
That's right. I love all that
which is
conglomeration.
all
of-
conglomerate. But it's because somebody in school, right? She was, big and athletic, and someone called her a stallion.
Is that where that comes from?
Yeah. And right? I mean,
Really?
I actually don't know the origin story of that. But
Come
I
on, I'm
literally
the oldest person
fan of
in
her
here.
work. I've just never taken a deep dive into the origin story of.
I mean, I would love
Megan
to be
the
called
Stallion.
Phil the Stallion. I was
is-
called Duck.
the
And-
duck.
no, I
Phil
just
the
called
Duck?
because I have flat footed, so I'm like I walk around like the penguin. But that wasn't cool. Like I would like these. I prefer the Stallion if I could.
The great thing about as George Costanza found out in Seinfeld is that you can't make up your own nickname.
Right, right. But there
It's
are.
also
I mean,
not a lie if you believe it.
I mean, what are others? What are other nicknames that are interesting for I guess-
T-Bone.
Well, that's pretty great. T-Bone Burnett.
Yeah,
That's
If you're
genius.
named if someone names you T-Bone,
What is that? Because that's a steak thing.
it's a steak thing.
But is there another thing that the old geezer, Caucasoid geezer, doesn't know?
I don't know. No, I don't
Phil
know.
the Caucasoid geezer.
Doesn't really have a ring to
What
it.
it had? I could be my album.
But the great
Name.
thing about them, it's that we're talking about the malleability of
Yeah.
of language and names, right? That that once you open the gates and say that anything goes,
Right.
it pisses off a lot of older people.
Yeah, but it's interesting because
But-
if you look at the evolution of language, I mean, look at like 19th century, look at names for say gang names in the 19th century.
Right.
Amazing. And also
Ashcan.
Well, also the names were like really like like not menacing at all, like the Lucky Rabbits, or I don't even know.
Oh, like you're talking about like 5 Points
Yeah.
kind of
Like
stuff.
if you look at all the gang names of
the Lucky Rabbits, they would literally chop your head off.
or
though.
the
That's thing.
YOs.
Yeah.
Like if you were a gang now and you said we're the YOs, I mean, people were like, "What?"
Yeah.
they would laugh at you.
But it's also like if you use a bit of slang from 5 years ago, your 12-year-old would go, "Dad, you're freaking lame."
That's what happens to me and my 12-year-old.
Yeah. See?
I love saying that though. Like I really like saying, like when I meet her friends and they go hello, and they'll say what's up or something. And I go, I'm just keeping it real. And I
And you
go
go
like
like
that.
this?
I go like that. Yeah,
No.
because well, my job as a father of a 12-year-old daughter is to be as embarrassing as possible.
Yes.
And I take this seriously. I study it.
Yes, it's important for you to do that.
I look for references, things I can say.
Well, you're going to do it anyway, so you might as well do it the best that you possibly can.
Right.
I agree
That's
with
right.
you.
But I do like, I mean, it is interesting to sort of like to think about every now and then you hear words that are not being used anymore,
Right.
right? Like, what are words that were super popular 5 years ago?
Lit.
Fresh? Do people say I was trying to explain what's up to Lulu the other day.
Do you know how long ago that was? That
But
was
I-
20. How long was that? Was that 22 years ago?
I was
Yeah.
watching those. I was watching those ads on YouTube. I was watching those ads on YouTube, and they're amazing. And then all the memes that they kind of generate, or the copies they generate, they're
yeah.
really funny still.
If you were conceived when that commercial was on during like a Bulls game,
Right?
You're now old enough to consume the product they were marketing. That's the fucked up thing.
That's why this guy and I were such a partnership back at 0
You
to 60.
completed
'cause
each other.
That was exactly it. Yes.
You both conceived during What's Up?
No, I was conceived. Yeah, I was.
You're not 22?
I was conceived during. I think
During How Do You Do, Sir?
Howdy Doody.
So, okay, What's Up? What else was happening like 5 or 10 years ago that what words don't even exist or would be horrifying? Anyone?
I mean, lit is not
Lit.
a good word anymore.
Lit, yeah.
Janky, you don't hear
Janky.
very often.
People say fire, which is like a descendant of lit.
Fire's on the edge. I think.
I think.
yeah, I think it's on the way it's out.
Yeah. Bro, that's fire.
Yeah, once it ends up on an insurance commercial, then you know that it's.
Like, okay, like
That's
or
it.
like honestly, right now, like bussing out
What's
the way
that?
out.
Is that like busting plates?
Yes, like bussing plates.
Phil the Caucasoid Geezer wants to know what that means. What does that mean? This is gonna be my alter ego. You know how like Bowie had Ziggy Stardust?
Yes.
I will have Phil the Caucasoid Geezer.
The Caucasoid Geezer. The Caucasoid Geezer would be. I'd listen to that podcast. I think
You
need
already
a-
are.
That's
You're on
right.
there.
That's
You're
right. I
on.
am listening.
You're on.
It's now.
Yeah. That's
But you're right. I mean, all of this stuff is
oh,
to say.
you know what Lulu is saying to me
Jesus.
these
Here we
days?
go.
Saying cap or no cap.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Cap or no cap?
Cap
know
is
that-
lie.
What?
Cap is lie.
Yeah, and no cap means I'm not lying.
Correct.
But I
But
want
if
to
she's
know.
like, you're capping, you're lying.
Yeah, she's like, Dad, no cap. But I want to know where that comes from. Like, what's the etymology of that?
Here's the
How
thing,
did that start?
every good word or fun word that we end up using,
Yeah.
right, in this room of people that all end in vowels,
Right.
everything good comes from black culture in America.
But I used to really
true.
Like all the
but
good words, like all like the call it hip lingo. God, I'm fucking old. All the hip lingo though comes.
are using.
No, but it all comes from black culture and hip hop culture and music,
Right.
and then we end up getting it like 3 years later and just running it into the ground and ruining it.
Yeah.
I used to love making words though myself, or weird phrases.
Did you?
Like instead of saying like,
Oh, come
I'm
on.
trying to think of something now. No, I've really backed myself into a corner. Like instead of saying like, oh, I couldn't get a boner, you'd say I was full Flacido Domingo,
Oh,
Oh wow.
Flacido Domingo.
or I was full Lake Flaccid.
Those are great. Those are
Because then you could kind of
puns are puns.
But I love,
can
like-
be terrible though.
Yeah, but I
see,
re-
you by elevating puns, I think you are in a.
Well, actually, I've done that with the Viva Bastardo brand because
Yeah.
in the Viva Bastardo brand, I have a character I've created called Luciano Braparotti, who's the patron saint of loud exhausts.
Yes.
So that's that's a pun, but it's really, it's weirdly like it's connected to like culture and opera and all the rest of it.
Well, but all of this is to say that in automotive media,
Yeah.
the way that we relate to cars through media changes. It just, the changes have accelerated from, I mean, I feel like we were doing the magazine, it was 10 years ago now, like 10 years in automotive media.
It was more than 10 because that magazine died fall of 2010.
Oh, that's right. I was coming off an airplane, and Matt called me,
And said
I
magazines
was
are dead?
walking, and he goes, they're closing the magazine. I was like, fuck.
It was a week after SEMA,
Yes.
2010, and they dragged me up to the publisher's office.
So okay, so how does automotive media look now? Like how is it different from the way it was? I mean, for starters, obviously YouTube,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of like seen through glass schmee kind of people.
Well, everyone's chasing great video content,
Right.
which there's two categories, right? You either make really great stuff, which we do here at Hagerty, or it's like a channel that's more focused on like more raw, like individual, like personality host kind of situation.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly. But I mean, look at the people who are producing the best stuff, right? Institutionally.
So who do you think is doing really good stuff on YouTube?
Let's talk
other
about
than,
that.
of course, the Viva Bastardo
Well,
show.
other than Viva Bastardo show.
Yeah.
I mean, Camisa, right? I mean, Camisa for Hagerty, right?
So I was watching Camisa. He's fascinating to watch, but he's also weapons grade nerdery.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
it's granular, the details that he goes into from an automotive standpoint, for which there's a massive
But
market.
you just nailed it, because what was happening before I did my dopey talk show After Drive back in the day,
Yeah.
there wasn't enough nerd talk. Like there weren't enough, because people, going back to the car lounge and the stuff that we used to talk about on forums.
Don't you think it was all nerd talk? Like if you look at all car magazines, if you think about car magazines,
not enough.
Really?
It was not enough.
But for me, my memory of car magazines from the 80s and 90s was all like, skid pad numbers and all these little graphs and pie charts and whatever,
no,
right?
do you know what it was? It was a bunch of white guys trying to outright each other.
Have you seen there's a on YouTube, there's an amazing video, I think from the 80s or 90s maybe. It's a car magazine that did video reviews, and that guy couldn't be any whiter.
Motor Week?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be Motor Week, and it's amazing
People love
to watch.
Motor Week. It's
Motor
really
Week was
funny.
because where were they based?
They're Baltimore.
That's because like the roads, like nice looking roads, but it
Yeah.
was always like fall, and it was like some sort of
It's
like
always
Buick.
fall.
Yeah, it was
It's
a
always
Regal.
fall.
It's
The,
always
guy
fall.
the guy's got on like his like just like like casual jacket.
He's got a members only jacket. Yeah.
I mean, John, what do you call it? John,
Cougar Mellencamp.
John Cougar Mellencamp.
SEMA.
No, John. Oh my God, it's too
John
many
Holmes?
names. I'm so old.
John Holmes.
Yes, Johnny Wad Holmes.
Yeah, he was an automotive journalist before he made the jump to pornography.
No, but Motor Week was kind of like the original.
John Davis.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
John
that's it.
Davis.
Yeah.
John Davis.
Yeah.
It was the original. What did you say?
No, it was like kind of like the original automotive video content.
Yes, it was. So okay, so
you have like Camisa, who's doing sort of super granular weapons grade nerdery
because
stuff.
people, that's the thing that was missing. Really, is that people want to know all of the details. That's why
Right.
Doug DeMuro is such a phenomenon in
well,
automotive
Shmee
media.
is like that too.
Shmee is like that too, but Shmee is sort of Doug DeMuro for people that.
Well, he's Doug DeMuro with less of a he's less kind of like Doug DeMuro is brazenly eccentric, which I really love.
Yes.
I mean he wears like he's the brand of like what he wears is part of who he is and his brand. Like it's clearly like it's I don't know if he's thinking about it, but it's great.
Yeah, but the reason but that whole thing, the thing he's created, the persona, and it could be just him or it could be a persona that he created. People trust it, and that's the thing is that people trust
because you know what?
brands less. Sorry, I
Well,
was,
no.
I was doing my.
Were you reading from a teleprompter again? Good evening and welcome to the 9 o'clock news.
People trust brands less.
Well, you know what's interesting? Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. What's interesting is that I find that the people I watch are people I like to watch. And I know that sounds weird, but with Doug DeMuro, you feel like you're watching him.
Yes.
Like you're actually listening to him versus other stuff where you're watching a guy present to an audience.
And see now we're right back to Marshall McLuhan, because that's native YouTube content is the personal touch.
Which is why
Is hey
people
guys
like,
and whatever it is, right?
Which is why like Anthony Bourdain, for instance, worked.
Right.
Because you were listening to him, or you felt like you were having a conversation with him.
Right. So that was personal media going back and influencing traditional media.
And
That's a good one.
And Top Gear.
Top
Like
Gear.
those guys, you felt like those guys were who they were.
Yeah, but they still sometimes presented to camera. So when you
You're
say
right,
presenting
yeah.
to camera,
But no, you're right. They did present to camera. You're right. But they mixed it.
Yeah.
It's like you got enough of them and their kind of bickering and interpersonal like relationships.
Yeah.
But then you're right. You also had stuff where they were like, Clarkson was presentery.
yeah. Well, I mean, look at Camisa is presenting to camera. He just
Right.
happens to have a kind of a style that feels like it's him.
Yeah, you feel like when I'm watching him, I feel like he's that kind of nerd.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's a kind of nerd that I can trust because of all of this information
Right.
that he's. I mean,
It clearly interests him.
It clearly interests him.
Right.
Well, authenticity, right? So
Yeah.
now we're at that. We're back to authenticity, right? Because so many times when you were reading institutional media in the past or you were watching it, it felt like
It was an institutional voice.
it was an institutional voice. Exactly.
Right.
It was, you knew that there was a producer out there saying, don't say this, say this, don't say
Right.
this, because you're going to alienate these people.
Right.
If you're doing something that alienates people, it's good. Because what you're doing is you're being really authentic to people who do like it.
And you're also defining yourself.
Right. Right. You're defining yourself and you're not letting yourself be defined by an institution.
Like Phil the Caucasoid geezer.
Exactly,
It's
right.
fully defining.
So when you're talking about what modern automotive media is, it's people right now who've been able to thread the needle between things that they're already doing and the presentation of it.
Right.
Right? Because nobody wants to see, because when we were doing 0 to 60, right? If you had put a camera on us, it would have been the most boring thing. We would have been in front of a whiteboard. Like we
It would have
planned
been
out
6 guys in a conference room riding a bicycle on the table, not actually coming up with ideas for a magazine.
right instead of, and
I
then
feel like
ordering
that's a winning formula.
ordering barbecue. Like that was basically what we did.
Just gorging on barbecue.
Yeah.
Eating with your hands.
I mean, now, if you're a car enthusiast with a camera on yourself and you can be somewhat interesting and express your enthusiasm to other people.
Do you watch that guy, David Ciccone, I think his name is? It's an Italian guy. And
David Ciccone.
yeah, do you know what I'm talking about? He's
Madonna's sister?
Yes. It's actually Madonna and drag. He's an Italian guy in Italy, and he reviews cars. But he's so like and it's all in Italian. Then there's subtitles, but it's kind of amazing.
Bravo. I don't
He's
watch
like, hey,
this
la
guy.
regia. They would just write.
I don't watch this man.
Okay, this man you should watch.
I will enjoy this man.
Yeah, I mean there are people I like to watch on YouTube just because, and I don't even like. There's Do you know what mukbang is?
I'm sorry?
You heard me. It's this South Korean thing where you eat. It's videos of people eating.
I've heard of them. I didn't know what it was
So
called.
there's this woman called, and I think it's called Boki Eats. I don't know what, but her name is Boki, and she eats massive quantities of food, but she has these little subtitles, and they're really funny as she's eating.
Pop-up video. Do you remember pop-up video?
Oh, that's right. God, VH1.
VH1. That's
God, that was amazing.
But that was the beginning of interactive video.
That should actually be. I wonder.
Well,
I
it's
feel
also
like-
the beginning of like focusing on very short attention.
Hang on. So we should explain for people who don't know. VH1 had a show. They showed music videos, and then these little bubbles would pop up all throughout the video, explaining like little factoids and background information of stuff that was happening in the video, like this guy like is wearing a wig or whatever it happened to be.
Yeah, and it would the background information while it was great because you didn't use all of your brain cycles listening to the song, so you had some left over to read what
that
was
would actually
happening
be
on
a
the
kind
screen.
of a genius thing to do for YouTube.
It was,
I don't know.
it was sidebars.
Yeah, it was sidebars. You're right. That's a magazine metaphor. That's interesting. Mystery Science Theater 3000,
Right.
which was a shitty movie with
People peanut gallerying it.
peanut gallerying it.
Yeah.
That's a great verb.
That's right. I've never said that before.
But that's the thing. I mean, so yeah. I mean, I think the great thing about modern automotive media is that it's not really owned by anybody. I mean, although Hagerty might disagree. But I mean, you can be an institutional player, right? As long as you're producing things that are authentic,
Right.
right? And if you're an individual in your garage with an R33 Nissan that you bought and had brought over from Japan, and you're talking about every little detail of it and why it's cool, and these are Longchamp wheels from
Well, well, what's interesting is you can turn that into a career.
Yeah.
And like there's a guy who's been traveling around the States or the world with his Porsche and like a camping thing.
That guy. I love that guy.
And that guy that then got picked up by Porsche.
Right.
Was it 996 Road
996
Trip?
Yeah, something like
996
that.
Road, yeah. So it is interesting how brands have realized clearly for a while now that will lend them authenticity, of course.
Right. But personal media, right? So that's the thing. I mean, they used to call it, what did they used to call it? They used to call it user-generated content. And that was so crazy and institutional and owned. See,
UGC.
Well, it was a nice way. It was a nice way of saying free for the publisher.
right. Free for the publisher.
Right.
We make all the money,
Right.
and you guys just do it. And
We'll give you
shut
some
the fuck
stickers.
up.
Exposure.
Right. Exposure. You do
Oh, I
it for
love that.
exposure.
I love how exposure has always been a perceived currency, perceived only by the people who are trying to give it to you.
Right. Right.
But not by the people. I can't tell you when I was starting out as a photographer how many magazines were like, yeah, we can't pay you, but you'll get good exposure.
Right.
And I would always say, well, can I dine on exposure? Can I wear exposure?
Exposure coin.
Yeah. So it was
a
the early
crypto
form of
thing.
Bitcoin.
So yeah, I mean, but we're back to then people wanting to own the content that they produce.
Right.
So I think that there's an opening right now for a company to come up with a way for creators to own what they produce. So the problem with YouTube right now is that the algorithm is dictating what people do. So when like Doug tries to figure out what car to do next, he's looking at doing a car not because
It's interesting to him because the algorithm
Well, because
says.
the algorithm says it's
So that's interesting. So where do you? I feel like the algorithm is the oracle in the matrix. So when you visit the algorithm, what do you just see? Like, what are the cars that people are most
What's
searching
trending?
for?
Yeah, trending.
What's trending?
And
Okay.
and also if 5 of your videos, like so you do a few videos and they keep getting more and more engagement and better traffic, if you start doing videos that fall off, the algorithm will then start putting you on a different level, right? Dropping your exposure. So you have to keep doing. Once you're on the treadmill, you have to keep doing better and better all the time. Or, YouTube has the algorithm is a creation destruction cycle, right? So it wants to continually make room for new producers. So if current producers aren't producing and doing well enough, they're going to just drop them off the algorithm and pull in some new ones and see how they do.
So how does TikTok work? Does that have the same kind of
you know,
algorithm?
So
I have no
TikTok's
idea.
algorithm is terrifying. Like that's on it. Like it's the best thing they have going is their algorithm.
Why? What-
Because TikTok can figure out very quickly what you are into based on your initial interactions, like with the platform. So like you download it, you start like no, and like you watched it for like a fraction of a second longer. It's like okay, he's into polka dots.
Right.
Next video, dog and polka dots. Next video, cat and polka dots. Oh, extra like 3 seconds. Like and now he's like, oh, this guy's got a cat fetish. He likes polka dot and eats hot dogs.
Right.
Okay.
Like exactly. You know what I get? German Shepherds, guys playing guitar solos, and once in a while a Porsche.
Is this on? And what about Instagram?
It's pretty much the same.
I get mostly wiener dog content.
Oh, wiener dog content.
Yeah,
Do you have a wiener dog?
I do. So it makes sense.
Okay.
You know.
But what I was saying before is that I feel like there's an opportunity for another player to come in and come up with split the difference between having creators own what they produce and then also being a kind of studio that maybe gives them the resources, but then also allows them the freedom to produce things and not have to follow the algorithm into the abyss.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, that could be.
I mean,
that
the
could be a
algorithm thing. People always talk about it like it's an entity, which I guess it is, because it's determining. It's really, in some ways, it's the closest to Skynet that we have so far.
Well,
from Terminator films, right? It's determining what we like, in partially guided by us, but then at some point, very early on, it seems like the algorithm takes over and very quickly narrows the focus of what you're watching.
Right.
But the algorithm also is generating a buttload of revenue.
Yeah.
Is
Sure.
that's the big thing.
Sure.
Like it wants videos to do well because then the AdSense robots can charge more dollars.
There you go.
For so it all comes back to the money.
It does come back to the money, and it also it goes back to why the rest of media is doing so poorly. It's because they're so efficient at finding an audience for something
Right.
that
Well, that's the great glory of the internet, is that there's an audience for everything now.
Right.
Whereas pre-internet,
And they know
when it was magazine days, they were just sort of basic, like guns and ammo, trout and
ammo.
and bollocks,
trout and bollocks.
whatever it was. I love trout and bollocks.
Actually, Guns and Ammo was at the same publishing house
Yes.
that we were at.
Right.
Yeah, they
The
had
Daily Sponge.
the Daily Sponge.
The Today Sponge. God, I remember. Anyway, so but now
yeah.
you can find like the most obscure esoteric thing can have a massive audience.
Right. And all of the advertising revenue is going in. To your point, is going to these big aggregators like that. I mean,
Right.
Google and Facebook. I mean, Facebook to a certain extent, we'll see where they end up. But it's very difficult to then go out and get what we used to do at the magazine, which was to be, pitching advertisers all the time on all kinds of different stuff. And it's like, they're like, yeah, no, our spending goes into stuff that we know works.
Right.
Not your shit that like, oh, you want to build
So is there-
you want to build a project car and bring it to SEMA,
Do you think
whatever.
do you think the algorithm determines the nature of creativity? Then do you think that
It is.
algorithm curtails creativity in a way because it's determining so quickly and so soon and on such a massive scale what works, that things that might work but need time or traction don't get to? Do you think what's happening?
Well, there's always an effect, right? I mean, there's always an effect on what gets produced because, and I don't mean to cast aspersions or judgment on anybody, but like
judge.
But creators know, the best creators know exactly what they should be producing. They know exactly what their next show should be based on how well their other shows have done. They've become almost better than networks at predicting what's going to be good. Now, does that affect what they produce?
Well,
yeah,
and I would imagine.
I
would imagine it really drastically limits your creativity, because if you're bound by the shackles of previous success, then it's not dissimilar to being
bound by the shackles of previous
Yeah.
success.
Well, I think about this in terms of
good one.
in terms of art. Like I think about Lichtenstein or Warhol in the 60s. They had this extraordinary success and they never really moved beyond that initial style. And I wonder if the weight of that success stopped them from experimenting beyond that, really.
Well, it's interesting. So you look at Lichtenstein, what he did in the 70s and 80s with sort of objects that weren't out of, he
Right.
started out with comic books,
sure.
and then he went into sort of abstract
But
objects.
he always retained the initial same style, the Ben-Day
he kept
dots.
the Ben-Day dots.
That's right.
So, and I don't think he was as effective in the 70s.
That's what
and
I'm
80s.
saying. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like massive success can cripple your audacity.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's another
great
great
T-shirt
crippling audacity, crippling audacity.
of great success.
But you're right. I mean, ultimately, though, right? People, the argument to that is that if there's no audience, I mean, this is again, it's so crazy. It always comes back to art being something that people either only understand if it's popular, and it's only relevant and it's only important if it's engaged and
Okay,
with
but
and
going
popular.
back to Lichtenstein and Warhol, I wonder if I'd walked into it, if I was say in my 30s in the early 60s, which I was, well, and I walked into a gallery and saw Lichtenstein or Warhol, which was so radically different, and I wonder if I would have said, oh, he's just making comic books, or I would have seen the cultural significance of that at the time.
Exactly. It depends on your age. My dad thought it was bullshit.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
He thought that anything that he even thought, I mean, for him, I mean, anything outside the Renaissance was bullshit. But he understood abstractions.
Right.
He didn't understand pop.
Okay.
But the idea of taking a pop construct and making it art was radical at the time.
That's right.
And what does a creator do now to push boundaries? Okay, you could say that the algorithm is just a version of the canvas.
Right.
So if you can do art inside the algorithm, then
But the algorithm becomes a cage.
Well, isn't everything a cage?
Oh,
Bro.
wow. Oh, that's profound.
Well, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, really, like the idea of creation to me has always been the idea of cagelessness.
Well,
hopefully,
but you have a milieu that you operate inside.
Oh. Well, I mean, but a milieu. You're just trying to top éminence grise.
I was trying.
But I mean, God, this is very meta. This is very philosophical, but it's fascinating. I mean, that idea that how creative can you be if you're constrained by an algorithm which determines your success?
Right. But if you can be creative inside that algorithm in a way that expands,
maybe it's granularity, if that makes any sense. Like you're doing the same thing, but you're refining that same thing.
Yeah. Or you're able to satisfy the functions of that get you the effect of the algorithm, right? But you're inserting.
This is the world's best conversation that's happening right now all over the world. This is the best one.
I think that a lot of people will find this fascinating because I think a lot of people consume content on a regular basis and don't give it too much thought as to what's actually going into making it.
That's such a good point because there's so much content.
It's impossible to stand out almost.
Yep. That's so true. The content has become like water, right? Where you turn it on and content flows in a certain way to you. And if you're into cars, for example, if you're into Group B, homologated Group B street cars from the 80s, then that's what you get. I mean, the downside is if you use it that way, then you'll never get anything but that.
Well, then this goes to a sort of a greater explanation that expands into the political sphere and the socioeconomic, the cultural sphere. Like we only hear what we want to hear now. Right. And I guess and we only see what we want to see, which really I find is sad because it makes our imagination smaller.
I agree. But I think that the thing about magazines, when I was a kid, thinking about why I love magazines so much is that there was so many things that I didn't know. Sure. There were so many things that were out there and like, holy crap, like, I could go to, I mean, that's why Omni was such a great magazine because you just got all of these crazy influences and great writing and the photos and pictures, Sid Mead, drawings and things. I mean, it was incredible. I think that the people that are still out looking for something different are out there looking for it and they're going to find it. They may not find it on the couch sideways, scrolling through TikTok, but that might not be why they're using that. But maybe there's something else that they're using to discover it. Now, if you go to my Pinterest board, on the other hand,
but I wonder if there would be,
I really do have a pretty extensive Pinterest collection of things. But anyway,
if you want to plug that, that's okay.
I do. Yeah. I'm going to plug my Pinterest board
and talk about the scrapbook.
Mike Spin on Pinterest. I have a lot of stuff. Wheels. You like wheels? Anyway, sorry.
But you know what? That makes me think. I wonder if there's a opportunity for a platform that has an algorithm where its only job is to provide you with stuff that you have not expressed interest in.
I think it would be great, and I think it would behoove the.
But that's like going to a restaurant that feeds you things you're allergic to and or don't like.
Yeah, like you have a nut allergy. Try these cashews.
Right, like you're gonna stay there for not a very long time.
Yeah, but I wonder. I don't know, man. Like I wonder if
AI,
if it could be part of your kind of your digestive process, like the stuff you ingest. Like you go to this site and you know that for like. You look at it and it'll show you all this stuff that you never heard of. That I wonder if that would
there's a backlash. I think that developers at social media platforms will eventually start doing that and probably using
let
AI.
me just say to plug Viva Bastardo. That's a Bastardo concept. The contrarian. That's contrarian. Like the idea of not saying, okay, you like wiener dogs. Here's wiener dog content, but you like wiener dogs. Here's like people making toothpick models. So,
right.
Well,
eventually you'll be able to use AI. AI will know all the other things that you are into, and then will eventually start making connections that you don't even know exist, and delivering you some discovery of things that you didn't know you even liked.
You know who's going to be first at this?
Nick Denton.
No, he's not going to be the first.
Probably the porn industry.
Oh yeah, follow what porn does.
Follow what they do.
Yeah.
That's
really a basic overarching philosophy in life, I feel.
No, they are always the first with like new forms of media technology.
Well, yeah, you're right. They adopt the. Okay, so is porn big on TikTok? They're not allowed on TikTok, right?
They're not allowed on, right?
No,
I mean, what would
but a
porn
lot of-
TikTok
but,
be?
No, but a lot of creators, for example, on TikTok or Instagram, use it to get people off of that platform onto things like
OnlyFans and stuff, yeah.
Right, which is extremely
Oh,
lucrative.
interesting. Okay.
Well, so that's, I think, I guess the good thing about what we're talking about is there's always going to be a new competitor
Sure.
to all of this stuff. And the next TikTok might incorporate AI and a blockchain or something. I don't know. But that actually makes discovery.
I have an amazing idea for I don't know if it's an app or what. Ready? I'm going to pitch it and someone's going to steal it. It's called Grumbler.
I got it. I just registered it.
It's called Grumbler because I feel like one of the top things people do on the internet is they complain.
Yes.
So what if there was like a video app where you had like 11 seconds to register, like make a complaint, a video complaint about something, and it would amalgamate it. So you could vote up or down the best complaints.
Yeah.
It could be divided by like automotive grumbles, like personal hygiene grumbles, like subway grumbles, and then that would generate a massive amount of data that will be available for people who, like, say you're an airline, you could go to the airline grumbler and see like, they're all complaining about the way that, this thing or that thing.
Is that putting too much negativity?
No, because
into
it's
the
out there
world?
already. And plus you would only record really great grumbles. But it'd have to be really funny and hilarious and like,
they would rise to the
Yeah.
top because most people don't like. I think people like writing them more than they like reading them. Don't you think?
I don't know.
Although
I don't know.
occasionally verbal grumbles are hilarious. Do you remember during all of like the riots and protest stuff in LA, they had like the LA council meeting things that were like zoomed in, and the one guy went like just ranting, like, and he was like, "Fuck you, relinquish my time." He had like 11 seconds. It was like the biggest like mic drop sort of thing, and I was like,
That's brilliant. That was
"Wow,
But
that's
also,
a good complaint."
I'd be willing to bet that if complaining became a sport, people would love it because
New
that's-
Yorkers
that,
would win hand
That
down.
would English people.
No.
It's like an Olympian activity.
Oh, okay.
Because I feel like English people are Olympians at complaining about everything.
Whinging.
Yeah, you could break it down: whinging, being peeved, irked.
Oh, irksome is.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate things that are irksome.
I'm telling you, this is a money-making idea. If anyone's interested, please call me. I've registered, trademarked it. It's all ready. I just need someone to help me make it real.
So that's what you've been up to.
Yes.
Since you got out of the magazine game a decade ago till now, you've been working on Grumbler quietly in the background.
That's true. I mean,
who doesn't complain?
I don't know.
Everyone complains.
Everyone complains, but speaking of, I have a complaint. I don't know
See?
what you've been doing.
What are you doing now?
Okay,
Spinelli?
so I for a while I was at a website called The Drive,
Right.
And The Drive was owned by Time Inc. Time Inc. Used to be now it's
It used to be AOL. No,
they were
bought
part
AOL.
of Time Warner, and then they spun Time Warner spun them off the magazine division.
Now it's owned by Gazprom.
There was wow, that's a good joke. No, they Meredith, a Midwestern magazine concern,
Right.
bought them, or magazine and media concern bought them, and they sold The Drive to a private equity firm that is now buying other media brands and sort of
They're very
recultivating
interested
them.
in Viva Bastardo.
Yes, they certainly
Very.
are. It's called Recurrent Ventures.
Okay.
So I left there full time. I'm doing a column for The Drive, and the column is the sort of intersection between new technologies and automotive enthusiasm. So everybody hates it. Is really the thing.
Did you notice my eyelids drooping?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
You triggered the narcolepsy.
But that's exactly it. So I'm trying to find a new rubric.
Okay.
For it. No, I think that, to me, that's what I'm interested in, automotive enthusiasm as things are transforming into something else, because all the automakers have announced plans to go electric, all electric, pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Ford is, I don't know if Ford had said they're 100%, but they're creating that other side that
Right.
is. And so what does that mean for automotive enthusiasm, right? Automotive enthusiasts, I don't think really give a shit. I think they're just just give me an air-cooled Porsche and I'll be fine.
You see, that's interesting, man, because I rented a Tesla for a weekend and I thought it was amazing, because I think that the thing with what's automotive enthusiasm? Is it how things work? Is it how things sound? Is it about the driving experience? Is it about how things look? And I think it's all of those things. And for me, I'm not really that interested in how things work. Mostly because I don't have the brain capacity to understand how things work.
But it's like a cake. You have to have all the right ingredients.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Are you sexting?
No, I
Here's
just
a picture
realized
of my balls.
do you have to go?
No,
Are you late for a meeting?
no, but I do have some.
Are you pitching an idea
no,
to recurrent
I-
media?
Is it
have
Grumbler?
somebody-
Are you launching Grumbler?
He's already on the phone with
We
the
are
venture
having
guys.
a conversation, and you're texting Spinelli.
Hold on a second.
Hold
I'm
on.
so sorry.
This is a terrible date.
Yeah. You know what? That's it. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the podcast. You gave me the conversational prompt. You know when you're talking to someone, they start texting like, yeah,
The Midwest slapping these well.
yeah. You're like, it's just like a nudge, just nudging me along. You're just nudging me along. Not actually
Sorry,
listening.
that was just a quick. That was a quick one.
Quick, meet you later on in the public bathrooms. Okay.
I had a bunch of texts, and everybody wanted to have like a meeting right now. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Because they
Meetings?
know you're on the Viva
But
Bastardo show.
nobody calls me or nobody texts me on a regular day. It's just like today, all of a sudden, everybody wants to have.
They're trying to ruin your vibe, man.
They heard you were going to be here.
Yeah.
I guess they did.
I can't remember what we're talking about. Should we bring it to a close? Is that it?
Well, wait.
You ruined everything, man.
We were talking about enthusiasm in
Automotive
the
enthusiasm.
automotive enthusiasm.
Okay,
as,
can I
as
make
the-
it? This is my thing about electric cars. I feel like I'm hoping this will be a renaissance of car design. This will bring back like amazing car design, like the sort of, remember the amazing concept car stuff from the 70s?
Yes.
Because the skateboard technology has kind of freed up what we can do with cars in physically or aesthetically. I hope and think maybe we're going to be entering a period where cars themselves are just going to be looking radically different, hopefully, than the last 10 or 20 years, which has not been that interesting.
It's very possible, but I mean, the only problem is that because the underpinnings will be homogenized.
Yeah,
Because
they're all good, and performance-wise, it'll be the same.
Well, that's the problem. It's performance-wise.
Yeah, but then what that means is then it'll nudge us in different directions.
Yeah.
Well, because it'll be what cars can do. Like, oh, you can sit in this car, and all the seats will go horizontal, and we can project movies onto the ceiling, and you'll get a massage. You'll get a hand shandy.
I feel like you've got a different sense of how enthusiasm actually works.
What? That's not what everyone wants? People don't know.
Well, no, because in theory, it could bring back like the era of coach building.
That's right. That's what.
Except
That's
except
what I'm.
for crash regulations.
Yeah.
No, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, I
true.
mean, remember in the 60s, you go and get like your car bodied by Vignali or whoever, or
Zimmer.
Bertone.
Zimmer.
Was it
Wow.
Zimmer?
Holy crap. Yes,
The
Zimmer.
inventor of the Zimmer frame.
No.
Zimmer was built on a GM. Was it a GM? A GM. One of the.
Oh, was that the one that looked like with the like
It's
the
like if Mr.
1930s
Burns
car?
came to life and had to have a car drive him around.
The Zimmer
Yeah.
was built
with those
on,
hoses going into the
Yeah.
I feel like it was on like the Riviera platform or something.
No, they're
so
they're
funny.
horrifically amazing.
yeah. I would actually like to. You know what? That's actually. I would love to talk to the people, the Zimmer people. Note to self after a podcast. That would be genius.
Well, yeah, but so that I mean, I think the idea that if you can make money building short run, like small batch cars, like an El Camino, like you have 5,000 people who want an El Camino, you can sell that and still
Right.
make money.
I mean, I wonder if it, like you say, it'll be customizable, right?
Could be. I mean, I think that's where a lot of the additive manufacturing stuff is going to start coming in.
Right.
I've been talking to Kevin Zinger at Zinger, right? So they build
Zinger or Singer?
Zinger with
Like
CZINGER.
zingers, like joke zinger.
With a C in front.
Oh, the
Kazinga?
3D printed.
Yeah, the
sculptural-
3D printed sculptural car. So
I didn't know
that the
that
car. Yeah. So yeah, that's something to look into.
Okay.
They make a really interesting 3D printed supercar, hypercar, I guess at this point. That's one part of the company, and the other part of the company is called Divergent 3D, which is building an entirely new platform for building cars using additive manufacturing technology.
Okay.
So in his world, in the thinking, going forward in that is that you can then localize production, and a car company won't need to be the monolith that it is.
Oh, they'll just have printing plants in various
printing
cities.
plant.
Right.
They'll be just a kind of idea factory.
Right.
And you'll have automotive printing
That's
plants.
fascinating. So you'll have a hand in designing your car, and then you'll go and you'll send it to print, basically.
Oh, God, I didn't even get to that. No, they would still have designers, because imagine.
Why can't you do
It's
it?
not like make your own pizza.
Right, it's the Homermobile times 1,000.
What I mean, no, but what I mean is like they'll have options that you can choose,
Yes.
and they'll be printed. Like there'll be a list of stuff, so you can customize your shoe or your whatever to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, or
Beyond
it's
just like picking
regionalized.
paint or whatever it happens to be.
True, although it could be also regionalized. So, like if you're in Australia, maybe you want Utes. Maybe you want an El Camino, and like if you have one in Ohio, and you need a combination of
to
Hondas.
transport potatoes, for instance. You need a potato transport vehicle.
Ohio is a little too diverse for. I mean, somewhere that's very specific, right?
England.
England,
You
right?
want a
So
place
you
that
want.
takes you to the dentist.
So you have a hot hatch, and you have a
Tweed mobile. You have a Tweed
a
mobile.
little van, a tiny van, and a
Something that encapsulates misery.
Yeah. You could complain in there, and it broadcasts your complaint on a loudspeaker as you're driving through town.
exactly.
My tweed trousers are too small for me.
But imagine rather than a giant homogenized single platform,
Yeah.
that you could there would be these numerous platforms that you could then create cars, not in the millions, but you have small printing facilities all over the place, and it would be a nightmare for regulations and
Well, as long as they'd have to be bound within parameters of safety. And you're sexting.
sorry.
Here's my balls again. It didn't go through.
Here's my balls again. That's my memoir.
That's your sign off. That's your email sign off.
Here's my balls again.
I feel like we've been.
It's almost 2 hours.
We've been chatting for a minute.
Okay, we should. I feel like this is actually about 12 podcasts. We're going to break this down into 3-minute podcasts and just release it.
It's probably a
Well,
good idea.
we should probably draw it to a close. But I just want to say, Mike Spinelli, massive quads, meaty pecs.
Meaty pecs.
Yeah,
Meatypecs.com.
Yeah. Thank you, man, so much for coming on. You've been amazing. It's been an incredibly invigorating conversation.
Well, this has been great, because when I came in, I thought we were going to be talking about cars and watches. And by the way,
What's your watch?
it's a Seiko
I like
Sport
a Se-
5 6019. That's all I know. It's some 1972.
Oh, I love a Seiko, man. Let me see that. This is cool. Oh, that is cool.
I always loved the shrouded. Like I
What?
what?
What? I beg your pardon.
like the
Now look, this is a family show, Spinelli.
shrouded.
I like the shrouded lugs. Are these hooded lugs?
Hooded.
No.
Is it hooded? I don't know. You're the
Veiled.
watch guy. I don't know what it's
Veiled.
called. Veiled.
What?
I have no idea.
It's the like a
Virgin?
Hoyer from the same era.
Cushion case?
I don't know. Is that what it's called?
Anyway, this is very nice,
Thank
man. We'll have to take a picture and we'll throw it up on the YouTube, YouTubes.
We have the technology.
Yeah. But thanks again, man. It's really been great. Anyone who's still listening, thank you for making it through.
I think we've covered so many elements of philosophy and society and technology and the intersections between the.
This
all the
truly
above.
was the nexus of Blatheropolis.
Yes, it was.
In conclusion. So thanks again, man, for coming.
Oh,
it was a
great
delight.
to be here.
Woo!
Oh man.
Man, that was amazing. That was,